Okay, I thought I would do a quick video on just some of the stamps in my private collection. Sorry, I'm going to have to do this handheld, so it might be a little shaky. I just don't know any other way to do this, and as far as video goes, but I happen to be a big fan of old engravings, and there used to be a lot of different companies that, a vast percentage of their line of stamps were kind of this curated collection of old engravings from, I don't know, various old antique books or the Dover books of copyright-free clip art. And I don't know, a lot of those companies aren't around anymore, so just a lot of different styles of companies these days, but like I said, a lot of the companies back when, I don't know, they didn't have their own kind of in-house artists, or they did, but it was supplemented by a lot of these other types of images that came out of, those copyright-free types of, I don't know, sources, I guess you could say. And I know that because I saw a lot of the same types of images or same imagery, maybe in different sizes, in many different catalogs at the time, but I happen to be someone that likes a lot of tight details, as you might assume by looking at the designs from Stampscapes and the high detail, but I was always into black and white illustration and old engravings, so, in old engravings, there's a lot of tight detail in them. This one was by Gumbo Graphics. I think that was one of my favorite companies back in the day. I don't know, it's things from Leavenworth Jackson and 100 Proof Press and Good Stamps, Stamp Goods. 100 Proof Press is still out there. A lot of these other companies aren't, but let's just go over and take a look at some of these different images. I really like this plant right here. This is by Serendipity Stamps, 2010, but I like that plant there, and I thought that would go really well with the, the Stampscapes types of imagery. I saw this being used as kind of foreground, as an overhanging plant life, or kind of coming in from underneath in the foreground. I thought that would be really good. I don't know, like, look at this little guy, but I saw this guy kind of sitting down, and, when I see these types of imagery, I tend to think about how it could be used in a scene, so I saw him like with a sky image up above him or something like that. It's cool little heads. I love all these little heads and adding that to different types of scenes. Jellyfish. I didn't do an underwater scene, but I had this one kind of in the sky one time. I think a lot of the scenes that I've done with these images here are in this gallery section on the Stampscapes.com website called Fusion. I think it's the Fusion Gallery or something like that. And what that just means is it's not about a style, but I've just fused Stampscape stamps with other company stamps, okay? Stampscapes and just scenic stamping in general, one of the things about that is that your scenes and your nature elements could certainly be used or primarily, or, in terms of the possibilities, as background stamps for other companies' stamps. I love a lot of the different angels. I think they're really dramatic. Just used that one in a video recently. These ones are huge too. Look at my hand right here. This stamp is really big, so is this one. The opposing side. In fact, that block is a different size. It's just that image flipped around. It looks like he did it in, I don't know, maybe those angels are in two different sizes, but that was from Marks of Distinction, a company that had all kinds of that type of imagery. I think I've seen the, yeah, here it is. See this image right here, sorry about the shadow, is a smaller version of this one right here. There's a lot less detail in this one just because it couldn't handle it, getting reduced down to that size, but this one, I don't know what company this is. There's no name on that. There might have been a name, like it looks like it was, I bought that from a store, and that's where the pricing tag dried up and fell off, so I don't know who that's from, but I really love that image there, and I love it coming out of like clouds and things like that, sky figures. So I have a lot of angels in here. That was one of my favorite types of imagery. Bugs, of course, work really great with Stampscape stamps, in terms of nature. They're really large, so you would have to take a kind of a worm's eye view of something to have them in there. But oftentimes I play around with scale. I don't have things to the, whatever right size or something like that. Or I might make more of like a diagram overlay or something in the sky over imagery. And it becomes more of like I don't know, like a diagram or like a sketchbook type of thing, something more kind of science-y looking in terms of like I don't know, the Stampscape stamps just kind of being in there, but it's really more about the bugs in some sort of chart or something like that. This one was some cool flames. That one was by Imaginair Designs. You used to love their company theme. I really like this Gumbo Graphics sun. I've seen this many times before in smaller versions by other companies. Gumbo Graphics is owned by someone, but I can't remember who. This is a little octopus. It's done by a Fistful of Stamps. They're gone now, but I've used this kind of underwater in my ocean scenes. A lot of other types of moons, and I love sky imagery with faces on it. This one's by Leavenworth Jackson. She had a really great, or has a really great kind of curated collection. Hands, I always love the different hands, and I bought a lot of these ones from Stamp a Barber back in the day. They had a section or a wall, and it was entitled Body Parts, so there was things like faces and such. I always liked that face right there, kind of gazing up at the sky. And in fact, I want to do something with this face, like kind of coming from below. I'd stamp this like at the base of the page, and I'd have different sky figures above, and I see it as someone that's kind of being mesmerized by, the beauty and, I don't know, the sky. Edward Gorey stamps. This was a little set, and I wood mounted it. I think they were foam mounted before, but I didn't like it's like one of those kids kits, and it was foam mounted, but I just peeled them off and I put them on wood, just, for a better, I don't know, stamping experience than those little foam, kind of those breakout ones. But I always loved Edward Gorey. You might remember him from the PBS mystery, I think it was Mystery Theater, kind of a little animated piece to introduce that. That one was a really fun one. I've done that one for, I think, a bioswap or something. Egyptian themes things. That's a cool house to use in a landscape setting. But I love things like maps and cartography types of things, but I love these charts, almost like blueprints. And then if you put things around it, like nature imagery, you can really give it a kind of an interesting feel, because it's half kind of, I don't know, it's not realistic, but kind of, but then you have the chart on it. And then I love going back in and adding some additional line work with things like gel pens, to make it more kind of diagram-ish, blueprint-ish. Old types of imagery, these new ones to go above things like pyramids. I just saw this pyramid one used in a scene in the Facebook group, and I don't know, that's what kind of made me think about doing something with one of these images. But some really funky images here and there. I always like putting this one in front of something like, I don't know, amazing happening in the background, be it sky or something like that, or like a bursting volcano or something like that. It looks like it's conjuring something, but I always felt that was a really powerful image to use in a scene. This one's really fun. I like putting in like an ocean in the background with, you know, some stars or something like that above it, something nice and dramatic. This is a really great platform for kind of a foundation and what I call lead-ins. Like these are both lead-ins that lead your, you know, your eye into the scene. Skeletons and body parts, ancient runes. That's something that I don't have a lot of in the Stampscapes line, or really at all, unless you consider like a old, you know, structure, kind of a more recent rune. But you know, runes from 1,000 years ago can really be transportive in terms of a scene. This one right here was, you know, Easter Island stamp. I've used that several times. Something like this, where it's really closed off. This was from, I bought it at a little bazaar that used to be. But this one was, oh, that was Stamp or Rose. I thought that was, I forget what the name is, Stamp Art or something like that. But I saw this one being used as something that I could stamp on stamp board, and then I would go back and I'd, you know, scratch some highlights in stamp board. It's kind of like scratch board. Imaginair. I think I bought that balloon kind of at Viva Las Vegas Stamps that had a lot of stamps from some other companies, as he was selling some stamps on consignment from someone that was selling off their collection and had thousands and thousands of rubber stamps. But, you know, I've really come to appreciate, you know, kind of their construction of these blocks. I think they were all hand sanded or something like that at one point in time. That's Imaginair again too. So a lot of I don't know, whoever was drawing, you know, the owner or whatever, really knew what he was doing in terms of his pen and ink work. I like this guy coming out of the ocean, you know, so you take your Seaside Cove stamp or something like that. That, I don't know if this is a Hindu type of goddess or something like that. But these ones were the Curtis Uyeda designs. I really loved those ones. He did a lot of Asian designs, but I was more into his kind of Hindu types of imagery. And some other things like that. Look at this one right here. This one was a really fun one to use on stamp board, but look how dramatic that was. So on something like this is what I do not do on my own scenes, because it's kind of limiting, but it has this really hard edge border, so you kind of have to use that just in a scene as itself. I guess there's some things I could do with this one. I can kind of make it where it kind of tapers off the edge and doesn't have such a definitive line. Then I can expand on this scene if I want to, but just using it in itself, you know, as a kind of a self-contained whole card or scene is really dramatic. I have no idea what that illustration is from, but I found that really, really interesting. So I don't know, some Alice in Wonderland. There was an actual stamp company called Alice in Rubberland, and he had all the Alice in Wonderland images. I don't know who these ones are from. Oh, that was Alice in Rubberland. Maybe both of them are. Oh, those were. But these ones right here, I've seen them in other companies' lines before as well. So those ones are always kind of fun to use. That, you know, kind of that definitive theme. Imaginair again with the space shuttle. But look at these trees here. These ones were from 100 Proof Press, you know, but I love that type of look there. And this one right here is, oh, that one there is from 100 Proof Press as well, so one of my favorite companies. But this one was fun right here to use in a scene, but I didn't like that really definitive edge, right? Those harsh edges, because I wanted to do it on a larger scene, so all I have to do is, one of the great things about rubber stamping is you just color this portion of it right here. I think I somehow got rid of that stuff in the center, but I just stamped out the imagery and didn't stamp out the background. Then I was able to expand on an entire background, you know, in sky and everything like that, foreground, whatnot, just by kind of extracting the image out of it, just by not coloring in the background imagery. I mean, the scene in general as a whole looks great too, and you can use it for a whole thing, but if you want to kind of expand on the environment, then you have to kind of extract the image, which is one of the things about rubber stamping. You can just use portions for what you want. So anyways, those are my scenes. It's really fun to kind of give your scenes kind of a little bit of a twist, you know? You can have something going from, you know, kind of like a slice of nature or something like that. And that's all good. That's the way I use my imagery most of the time, but you know, you take something like a cloud in the sky, and if you have a Milky Way or something like that, or a comet, or just some just clouds and stars, or whatever going on in the scene, and you have kind of a scene that's more, you know, kind of reflective of nature, but you know, you put something like that in the sky, then it becomes something completely different because, you know, a lot of this type of imagery really becomes the visual focal point, and it's whatever the visual focal point of the scene is becomes kind of the theme of the scene in general. It doesn't matter how big it is. You can have an 11 by 17 piece of paper or scene, and it can be full of all kinds of details of, you know, mountains and trees and clouds and foreground and whatnot. But you know, if you stamp something like, you know, this 2 by 2 inch, you know, elephant riding duo here, and that will become kind of the visual focal point. That's what it'll be about. There might be something that would be an even stronger focal point that you might put in there, but that's just to say that if you add something like any of these types of things in there, you know, or you have a big scene and it looks very naturalistic, but then you stamp out you know, a sun with a face on it, it becomes something, suddenly it goes from something a little bit more, I don't know, realistic, in quotes, to something a little bit more, I don't know, whatever, esoteric or something like that, just from one little element like that. So there's a lot of other things with faces on it, so I like doing that type of thing. It's kind of fun once in a while to put like an eyeball or something like that looking out from the clouds or in the sky and whatnot. And that's kind of gives it a different look. I really like this type of thing right here, but I saw these little things as kind of like floating through the air. That's from Leavenworth Jackson as well. Looks like I bought one mounted, I bought one unmounted. It looks like I have the same thing here, but this one right here, I mounted it myself, so I can tell because that was some of my scrap wood. Anyways, so those are some of my private stamps. I have other ones that are unmounted as well, but these are my wood-mounted ones, and that's the way they'll stay. Even though, you know, these would all fit in one, you know, 3-ring binder very conveniently, but I still do like my wood-mounted stamps if they were already wood-mounted. In terms of usage and just kind of looking over them sometime and kind of deciding on what I want to stamp out with. So anyways, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. And there are my stamps. Maybe some of you have some of these stamps too.